Hello everyone, myself is Sadakat and I have been associated with MyAussieTutor since the past 1.5 years. I have a bachelor's in dentistry and a master's in public health, and today's topic for our discussion is physical inactivity, or from the Australian context, evidence-based practice. So when we look at physical activity and physical inactivity, we find that physical activity is basically described as the movement of the body that is produced by skeletal muscles that basically requires energy spending. That is your daily activities that you do, running, jumping, etc., while working and playing. So physical inactivity is a pandemic. That is when you are not doing these physical activities and not putting your skeletal muscles to use. Then it is known as the condition of physical inactivity, which is a pandemic in itself because it's the leading causes of death in the world right now. It is one of the four pillars that is causing non-communicable diseases, and its role is not valued as much despite its cost-effective benefits and protective benefits against the economic burden that is put forward by the current levels of people being physically inactive around the world. Because of physical inactivity, basically there is a rise in the non-communicable diseases which leads to death, and these non-communicable diseases could be heart-related, hypertension, blood pressure-related, sugar, diabetes, obesity. And physical activity or absence of physical activity, that is physical inactivity, is a leading cause of causing these diseases, which leads to death and increased economic burden in terms of healthcare. So the underlying undervaluing of the importance of physical inactivity has become a major public health issue and a stealth pandemic. So physical inactivity is a public health issue. Obviously, it's a pandemic and it is global in nature. More than a quarter of all adults were not found physically active enough by the end of global year 2016. High-income countries showed a greater prevalence towards physical inactivity in comparison with low-income countries, obviously because greater amount of sedentary lifestyle that they are following. And the trends in physical inactivity worldwide have showed that there existed variations in terms of inactivity based on income groups and countries. There has been large physical inactivity in high-income countries, and large physical inactivity was noted in Eastern and Southeast Asian regions of China, especially. What are these causes of physical inactivity? Basically, changing modes of transport from active to passive, where there is no need of any kind of movement. This is manual movement, mechanical, automatic movement that is happening. Changing lifestyle, lack of domestic activities that need to be carried out manually, lack of time that is available for carrying out physical activity, leisure or free time, lack of walking spaces, parks, sidewalks, etc., recreational places, and more number of places where there is no requirement of physical activity, such as playing video games, recreational centers, spending more time online, entertaining themselves leisurely, and spending more quality time or hobby time on doing things that are done at home instead of going out in the park. Other barriers, etc., are time limitations and dissatisfaction with exercise, and also sedentary lifestyle that is being followed. More economically better elderly showed better physical activity levels than elder people who are coming from an economically weaker background. Obviously, because economically better elderly, they have time, they have the resources and the material to spend to carry out physical activities as compared to the elder population that is coming from an economically weaker background. Socioeconomic factors, etc., use of mobile phones, sedentary lifestyle, smartphone usage, and spending more time on the phone and television and laptop, etc., has also met. Spending more time with technology eventually has basically led to more amount of physical inactivity in the population, specifically the elderly population. A study that has been done on the causes of physical inactivity, which revealed that gender also played a significant characteristic when you look at the levels and the causes of physical inactivity. Women tend to do less in their leisure time and be less involved in intense exercises as compared to men. It has been shown that certain factors like their cultural norms, the roles they play traditionally, lack of community and social support, also leads to a reduction in physical activity of women. In the international context, when we look at it, it showed that an increase in urbanization and a rapidly developing economy are also related to a lack of physical activity. That is based on the linkage of its occupation in adults, along with some amount of increase in television viewing by children. Africa also shows a similar trend, with the rural to urban migration showing association with an increase in the prevalence of physical inactivity. So when we look at Australian context, we find there are numerous studies that have been done, local and international, that talks about the physical inactivity and puts it into perspective, both in terms of disease and economic burden that it is having because of its causative factor, or because of its high presence, which leads to the development of non-communicable diseases that cause economic burden in terms of healthcare, and also healthcare accessing and facility accessing, and also eventually causing death. A cross-sectional survey with around 615 participants showed that a lack of proper knowledge and awareness about physical activity leads to sedentary lifestyle and physical inactivity. A qualitative systematic review that was done in Australia also showed that there were cultural and gender preferences also, where women belonging usually had less time to do these physical activities, and also indigenous population showed gender and cultural preferences when it came to their idea of physical activity. Basically, that population type and region both also determine, apart from the economic and social background, when it comes to the levels of physical activity in terms of the Australian context. What is the Australian government's policy on physical inactivity? Basically, the policy of the country around physical activity has been developed in 96 and has undergone many changes. Basically, they talk about increasing the regular physical activity for everyone so that the all-cause mortality is decreased and lifestyle-associated non-communicable diseases such as hypertension, obesity, diabetes that we discussed previously, cardiovascular diseases, heart diseases, cancers, etc. They can be reduced. But it requires amount and intensity from moderate to vigorous, and also the optimized health outcomes based on the amount of physical activity that each and every category of individual needs to do. Also observe that the guidelines need more robust considerations taking into account the cultural and the socio-economic factors as well. If you are just specifically saying an adult belonging to the age group of 50 to 55 needs to do this much of exercise, but are not taking into account the background that the individual comes from, the socio-economic background, the cultural background, the racial background, indigenous or non-indigenous, the socio-economic background, whether they can afford it or not, all of these things need to be taken into consideration when you are determining these optimum levels of physical activity or suggesting them. Therefore, culturally appropriate methods of promoting physical activity as an exercise, as an important thing in preventing non-communicable diseases, should also be then promoted similarly, and not just a blind policy of determining of giving or the number of hours or the number of days they should spend doing physical activity. So basically this presentation was basically a report on physical inactivity and how it has become a stealth pandemic worldwide. Then we looked at the Australian context of the same as well. What are the causes for this physical inactivity to develop? That included environmental factors, motivation factors, old age, socioeconomic factors, sedentary lifestyle, and the use of cell phones, mobile phones, and the use of social media and in-house entertainment on phones, laptops, TVs, etc. All of that, and the rural-urban migration. That has all of these contextual factors have led to a lack of physical activity, and the Australian government policy on physical activity needs to be reviewed in the similar way so that they are able to collect enough evidence, and then this evidence can be used to modify the policy about physical activity for the elderly population, for the population of the Australian country, and also to look at the racial factors in the indigenous and the non-indigenous cultural groups, etc., and to improve their policy in the Australian context so that it becomes more effective. So this evidence-based report basically help in providing that evidence base that is required to make changes in the physical activity policy of the country. I hope you have understood the entire topic. I'll see you again next time with another topic. Thank you.